You are now entering the Horror Sanctum.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with Kellen and TJ, and happy Valentine's Week or Singles Awareness Week, whichever you choose to celebrate. Today we are celebrating the 1981 classic My Bloody Valentine, directed by George Mahalka. I assume that's how you say that. But we are not going to the Valentine Bluffs dance alone. No, joining us today will be Miss Melissa Hannon, founder and editor-in-chief of Horror Geek Life. Melissa, welcome to the Sanctum.
Hi, thank you for having me, longtime listener. So, y'all have accompanied me on many road trips over the last year, so I appreciate that.
Well, we greatly appreciate it. You're probably one of 4 guests that we've had that actually listen to us, so it is appreciated. Before we dive into the movie, I just want to take a second and tell everybody about you, what you do, where they can find you, and then we'll get started with the movie.
Sure. So I am the editor-in-chief and founder of HorrorGeekLife.com, and we have a great team of writers that contribute pretty much daily. We have daily content from news, reviews, interviews, lists, and all of those fun things. But yeah, so it's pretty much horror and a lot of sci-fi, cult cinema. So it's kind of horror and geek combined because that's what we are. So, but yeah, so I am also a Rotten Tomatoes critic. Don't hate me. They're not too popular sometimes, I know, but yeah, so I'm a Rotten Tomatoes critic and I do a lot of film festivals as press and things like that. So I am on Instagram and Blue Sky and I guess Threads, even though I'm not really that active, but at Horror Geek Mel, and then we're also at Horror Geek Life, where you can follow me.
How's Blue Sky? I haven't ventured over there yet.
It's interesting because it makes me paranoid to post because now that I know you can go on and see everybody who's blocked you and you can look up all your friends to see who's blocked them. It's all open. And so I'm afraid every time I post, someone blocks me, like just randomly, someone I've never heard of, and I'm up to 7 blocks. And I'm like, I'm not posting anymore because people are going to keep blocking me.
Right. I struggle with depression too much to have that shit thrown in my face. They're like, so-and-so and free. I'm like, what did I do? I'm going to think about it for a week. What did I do to offend them?
That could be the new badge of honor. I got more blocks than anybody.
That's
Okay,
what
so
Roger used to celebrate that on Twitter.
Well, they have a list of the top blockers and the top blocked. And I think a lot of people who are blocking me have like 100,000 people blocked because they're trying to make the top 5 list, which I'm like, that's so boring. Why would you use your social media like that? But the community is pretty positive and it's a nice community. It's pretty laid back. So, but again, I'm just scared of getting blocked every time I wake up.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Maybe we'll
on Instagram, I don't care. Who knows? Who knows
I like the
blocks
anonymity
me,
because
so.
I've unfollowed some friends on Facebook because they just post dumb shit. I'm like, I don't want to see this anymore. So I would not want that information out in the open.
I've
Well, and
unfollowed
plus,
half
like-
of my family.
Looking at y'all, actually,
Yeah.
you and Kellen, TJ.
Plus, I get bored sometimes, and I'm like, "Who's blocked all my friends?" And then I message them like, "Haha, you're blocked, by these people. You're blocked by new people." And I'm like, "Oh, I have to get off this app." So that's the only downfall.
Maybe one day. All right. Well, go check her out. Check out the website. I'm jealous you got to speak with the king himself, Bruce Campbell, not too long ago.
Oh, wow.
I did, yes. That was for Hysteria. I've started doing a lot of PR for, or not PR, but the campaigns for Peacock. And so he has the new show, and they tapped me for that. It was amazing to talk to him. And he goes all into satanic panic. And it's kind of cool to hear it from his angle because, we were like kids during Satanic Panic in the 80s. And to hear it from a guy who was known for horror and who parents probably hated, and his view on that was really fun. So that was a good interview.
Very cool. Yeah, he was in some of the very first video nasties in the UK.
Yes.
The series is a fun show. Anybody else seen it?
It's on my to-do list.
2 O's. It's good. All right. So My Bloody Valentine, the OG 1981, a decades-old folktale surrounding a deranged murderer killing those who celebrate Valentine's Day turns out to be true when a group defies the killer's order and people start turning up dead. Now, as always with our show, spoilers. Granted, they're 44-year-old spoilers, but spoilers nonetheless. And we always pick the order, and I decided today let's just go ahead and rip off that band-aid now and start with the guy who watched this for the very first time yesterday. Wait a second. But let's take a pause. Can anybody guess which one that was?
It's me. Surprise. The person who's seen nothing of importance in the horror genre. So, have you seen? No. Have you? At this point, it's more of a. I get more applause when I have actually seen something. So, no shock that I haven't seen this one. And Jay was talking to me before the episode that this was originally kind of like a horror cult classic movie, and now it's kind of a little more mainstream. And I know that I think 2009 they did a remake.
They've got a remake. They've got a board game novelization. There's a comic series. Like it's taken off.
Nika has a figure now.
Yeah.
They've been trying to make a sequel for 40 years, but
well, eventually, because Valentine's is a made-up holiday anyway. Anyway, I don't want to piss off the big Hallmark or greeting card company, American Greeting Cards. Please sponsor us. I'm kidding. But yeah, 1981 is My Bloody Valentine. I'd never seen this before. I did recognize this guy, this face. It's iconic, right? Like, even if you've never seen the movie like myself, if somebody showed you that, you would recognize that's probably from horror, because it is a kind of iconic horror mask. I was actually very impressed with the look of the villain, bad guy, protagonist or antagonist, whatever you want to call him. It's a cool look. It's impractical having a huge hose hanging around all the time as you're trying to murder people. But for me, when I was watching this, I had a random thought. Just quick disclaimer: this got a 58% on Rotten Tomato. As we've mentioned before, you can't really go by that. Rotten Tomatoes kind of all over the place as far as
no offense to our guest.
None taken. Agreed.
No. But when you get into the critic vote, it's all over the place. So if critics rate it 58%, it's for horror, that's good historically. So but while I was watching this, I had a weird thought, and I was like, this is horror Footloose. Like, don't you go to that dance.
I thought the same thing.
That's funny.
This is if Footloose was a horror film. Like these kids are gearing up for a dance, and it's like, oh, you can't do the dance because you'll get murdered. Or in Footloose, it's like, you can't go to the dance or you'll become sinners. Like, it's basically the same thing, right? But I'm torn. Okay. We all, Smiley Face Assassin is my nickname. We all know that I have a history of crapping on beloved films or films that other people like, or are universally accepted as good. Excuse me. But this one, I'm conflicted. Like, this is I would consider what would you say, the Silver Age of horror. We have the Bronze Age of the 30s, 40s, 50s, and there's kind of like a lull where it's a little more suspense based, and then this is kind of like, you could maybe the golden age of slasher films with TCM.
It's definitely the golden age of slasher films. It's the first wave of slashers from 80 to 83, 84, somewhere.
Yeah, even going back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, and then Friday the 13th in this. And it has some great kills. Like, that's one thing that I was like, some of them are set up obvious in the beginning when he's down in the mine with the girl and she's taking her clothes off, and obviously she's about to die. That's the trope now, but at the time that wasn't so much the case. But it's coming. He puts the pickaxe in the wall, obvious what's about to happen. And so my original thought is he going to just be killing people with a pickaxe? Because that's going to get dull. I mean, there's only so many ways. No, he kills them every way possible. I didn't even know they had nail guns back in the day, but he messed up that the guy with the great mustache. The shower scene I was talking to Jay before, that's a fantastic kill. Even him turning the water on. And it did something that a lot of horror movies don't do. Scream is the first one to come to mind as far as a big one where the reveal is the movie. The kills are great. The story is kind of secondary to the whodunit aspect of all of those. This one from the beginning tells you who the killer is. Of course, it's not going to be him. There's going to be a twist, but who was the original right? You know who the guy was that was killing the kids because of their damn Valentine's party while they're stuck in the mines. Um, but this movie's also very boring. Like, I don't know how else to say it. I was watching it, and the in between scenes I just didn't care about. Like, all of these people seemed like the type of people that I would not want to hang out in my day to day life. Which, you know, there's always some in every group, you know, the horror film genre where you have the jock, you have the nerd, you have the outcast. They kind of follow the um Breakfast Club. They kind of follow the Breakfast Club grouping, but all of them are kind of like the jock douche guy. Like, there's not really the nerdy guy. There's not really the you know, awkward guy. It's just everybody's kind of like annoying. And then you have the love triangle between the two guys, and that was pointless to me. I get that it's a Valentine's movie. I was even like hypercritical of it being in Valentine Bluffs, but then I'm like, okay, well, why would they have a big to do about Valentine's unless it was like part of it? So I give that a pass, but just the rest of it, I just didn't care. Like, these are coal miners. They should look gritty and dirty, and they're all like, you know, hot teenage dudes running around, and all of the girls are just fine with them being borderline rapey in the way that they approach them and talk to them and touch them and stuff. So I just didn't care about the movie, if that makes sense. Like, I was watching Four Kills, which I guess isn't a bad thing if you're watching a horror movie that's a slasher. The kills are part of the film. But that was the only thing that kept me interested in the movie. Like, I didn't care about the plot. I didn't care. It was convoluted that the guy that ends up killing everybody in the end, his whole basis was because he saw the guy kill his dad. Like, if anything, you would go in the opposite direction.
It's Silent Night, Deadly Night, right? Like, he saw
I've never seen that. Spoilers.
Well, it happens in the first 5 minutes. So it's not spoiler. Also, real quick, the triangle, I think that was put in place because the whole time we think TJ, Tom, whatever his actual name is, we think he's the killer, right? Like, he's back in town. He's jealous.
Always gotta be a TJ.
So I think that's why they put that in there, just as a little bit of a red herring. So while we're watching it, we kind of like, okay, it's this guy, and then when we get to the end, we're like, oh shit, it wasn't that guy after all.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. That movies like this typically do is they point too hard at the red herring, so hard that you know it's not him. Like you can't have him be like brooding, and I mean, he's kind of emo in this movie, even though that wasn't a thing in '81. He's like, she loves me, bro. She's gonna pick me, not you, because I'm back. And I mean, you're like, yeah, that definitely, the guy's not killed anything. That guy's gonna be the hero, obviously. But yeah, that was my problem with this movie. And it's not that it's a bad movie. It's not overly long. It's just the subject matter outside of the kills was boring to me. It was like, if you take the kills away from this and you take the love triangle and make the guy coming back to town be her or be a Christmas tree farmer, this is a Hallmark movie. So you've got the guy that she's with now that's, you know, hardworking or whatever, but he's kind of a jerk, and then the guy that was the lost love of hers that happens to be, you know,
or it's Canadian,
runs an
Riverdale.
orphanage. Yeah, Canadian Riverdale works as well. And I love stupid Hallmark movies. It's just this one never grabbed my attention enough to care, if that makes sense. Like at the ending, I had to rewind a couple of times because I kept zoning out when they were, especially the fight with the pickaxe versus the shovel. I'm like, what are you doing? What who choreographed this? It's just a clank, a clank. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to rate this on the fly at the end. I haven't really had time to think about it today.
So we have time to persuade you to
yeah, absolutely. Make your cases, because I will base my final judgment on how well y'all build a case around it. Because I literally don't really care what I rate because it didn't have that kind of effect on me. I can see why it's a classic. It definitely adds something to the genre as far as some of the kills. I'm sure for some future directors and creators of horror films, this kind of helped them push the envelope, especially as the 80s went on. We did get into more camp, and there wasn't so much attention to violence and gore in the 80s, but we did get a lot in the 90s, and I'm sure some of those films were directly influenced by some of the things that happened in this. I just could care less. Like, I'm not going to go back and revisit this movie. So I don't really know what else to say.
Isn't Riverdale Canadian already?
Is it?
That's a good, yeah.
It might be.
So.
I don't know.
Okay, so we can't use that. We'll do Canadian Footloose or some shit.
But yeah, that's my opinion.
All right, Melissa, welcome to the Sanctum. That's Sar Kellen.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I guess I don't have to look at this as like a new person coming into it. It's something that I've seen for, decades now. So, it's okay. I have, Jaws 3D album right here.
I see that.
I have,
very nice.
Thank you. I have a Microwave Massacre poster on my wall. Like I love not great movies. And even though I love not great movies, I think this one is not so like it's not like so bad it's good. I think it's pretty good. It's good. But it also has a lot of things I really love. And so for the Valentine Bluffs, like I love that. Like I love small town horror. I love small town, and I'm from a small town, so maybe that's why. And it's very scary living in a small town sometimes. So I relate to it, but I like those dynamics and I think it's a lot of fun. I like, having this like one police officer, maybe two, and and kind of taking charge of like a serial killer, which is insane. But yeah, I really like a lot of the dynamics this one has. I love the look of Harry Warden. As you can see, he's behind me here with Elvira and Herbert West. But yeah, I love this one, and I watch it every Valentine's Day. Like I get so excited to watch it every Valentine's Day, and I love going to the town and visiting, and I love all the shops. Like it's just like it's so dorky, but I just love it. So, I will say though, what's really funny about this one is kind of the trope of like the teenagers looking like they're 45-year-old men, and that one definitely has that. All of the men look like they've been through like 3 divorces. They have a few kids out there somewhere. And so it's really funny to see like these like 19, 18-year-old girls like fawning over these men. And it's super lame, sex scenes and stuff like that. And like, I cannot think of a place that I would rather not be than in a mine when I am trying to be romantic. That sounds awful.
You mean the thought of suffocation or being trapped underground doesn't get you there?
Or like when they're like in between those wooden rails, I would feel so closed in and claustrophobic, and you couldn't pay me to stay there by myself. But it's so unsexy. But I love that they try to still kind of bring that element in because it's an 80s slasher. You have to. But it's so unsexy, like going down into a cold mine in February. But I love it. I think it has a lot of charm to it. And but I can also understand it's a lot more drama than it is horror for most of the film. So I can also get the boring aspect of it, especially if you're coming in, in 2025. I can understand that. So
we just interviewed Spider-1, and what was one of his favorite movies was The Shining. Of course, this mofo's like, I've never seen The Shining. And I mean, Spider went like, what? You've never seen?
I got to talk to him and Chrissy recently too. Him and Chrissy, they're great. And I saw y'all's, and I was so happy y'all got to talk with him. But anyway,
she made a little cameo at the end. They're gonna come back when they promote their next movie, though. So that'll
nice.
Be cool. Yeah,
good.
Yeah, this movie is, I do also watch it every Valentine's Day because, or this around the season of Valentine. Usually not Valentine's Day. My wife hates horror films, and that probably wouldn't fly on Valentine's Day unless I stay up super late, which I have several times and done. But
such a big boy.
Staying up late watching horror films and then having to wake up super early and go to work the next day. Fun times, getting old. But I'm just now, as we're recording this, I'm remembering the last time I watched this before I watched it this week was the last time I took way too many CBD gummies and was in the middle of watching like the coal miner scene where he's like coming at him and knocking out the lights and trying to fight him at the end. Just when it all started to kick in that I took too many, I was starting to freak out a little bit. So That was the last time I took CBD gummies, and a good. It was almost like watching the 3D version but of the original, not the remake. But I love this film. Watching it and coming back to it now, I probably first watched it in my teens, like on cable, probably like the Encore movie channel, where I probably first saw Friday the 13th for the first time, that kind of thing. I had the original bare bones DVD that went out of print and then was like 60 or 80 bucks on eBay. And for this was a historic film. It's Quentin Tarantino has touted this for years as being his favorite slasher film, which gave it a little more attention later after it'd kind of been forgotten about for a little while. Um, if you know slasher films, you know this is one of the most iconic slasher characters to be in a one-off film. It's one of the most iconic holiday horror films and horror slashers. So this occupies a very particular space in horror history. It comes in 1981, just a year after Friday the 13th. And it's very much in that first wave of slashers where people were trying to cash in on both holiday horror and the whole slasher thing that they're making up the rules as they go based on the success of Halloween. Halloween, though, was doing something very different from most of those imitators because you knew from frame one who your killer was. Interestingly enough, most all of the imitators in that first wave till about, it's debatable. But I dated about 1983 as the first wave of the slasher horrors that really have that whodunit kind of mystery vibe. Some of them more creative and better on the mystery side than others. Some are fairly obvious from the beginning, but I actually liked the charm of those because I was a big fan of the whole Agatha Christie novels and film adaptations like Ten Little Indians, and then there was none. A lot of my favorite thrillers like Identity, different things like that have that kind of element of we're starting with a whole bunch of people and one of them's a killer and you don't know till they all start getting picked off, and then you kind of got to guess and figure it out with the movie. I like that aspect. This was one that, sometimes when it had been a while since I had seen it, I'd forget who the killer was. And what's funny is when they were filming this movie, the reason they play everything so straight is they didn't even tell the cast who the killer was until it was time for Axel, the guy playing Axel, to film that insert scene where they take his mask off and guess what? It's this guy. So, and they did that. The director did that. So none of them would have any tells in their acting, which I thought was kind of cool. That's a good director trick to get authentic performances and kind of throw people off the scent so they're not telegraphing any of the plot. I do like anytime there's a TJ that's a possible killer, possible hero. You never know, and we don't get a lot of love in the horror world, us TJs. So I'm glad to have it go on the right side of history, being the hero at the end. So that's always nice for TJs out there of the world. I loved the remake. Hopefully we'll cover the remake at some point in time too. The remake's a lot more, I'd say exploitation a little bit more, for a few scenes in particular. But, that was kind of the wave of that was in the middle of. And I think it's one of the better 3D horror films that there's been, just because the technology was just starting to kind of catch up to where it wasn't just the red and blue glasses that you got to kind of tilt just the right way and maybe see sort of an effect. But this film, man, yeah, it is a Canadian melodrama with not very great acting and not super professional actors, but then some really great gore effects and kills. However, this has a long history of that because most of the cuts that we all saw, when we first saw, probably, was the terribly slashed up R-rated cut. And that was the only thing that was available until the remake came in 2009. They re-released the DVD. They had found some of the original director's footage that was thought to be lost for like 20 years. and they reinserted it, but they didn't remaster it in the 2009 special edition DVD, which I still have in one of my big binders of mystery. And but all of those scenes, like the quality was so denigrated, you could obviously tell when the cuts were made. But it was still cool to finally be able to see like the pickaxe coming up through that dude's chin and through his eyeball, and like some of the great kills. They're in the uncut footage. So Scream Factory, when they put out their release, they actually cleaned up that footage, and that's the best version. The director still swears that there's some frames lost, and that's not the entire thing that he shot, but it's the closest thing we got. And I just rewatched that one this week, and that's highly what I recommend, especially if anybody's watching it now for the first time. Watch the Scream Factory Blu-ray. That's the best version that the director gives the kiss of approval to. But, you know, I think it's probably one of the better 80s slasher films. It's one of the most iconic slasher characters and holiday horrors. And I watch it every year for a reason. I don't watch Valentine every year, even though I kind of like Valentine. We did Valentine on the show. I only watch the remake every year, even though I like the remake. But this is the one I keep going back to. I'm hopeful that Hard Eyes coming out this year, next week. Or
Everybody's been seeing that and said it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, Bria just saw it with Barb and like said it was absolutely.
I'm very hopeful for it. And maybe that'll be a new one in the mix we can watch every year. But up until this point, for me, it's my Bloody Valentine. What say you, Jay?
You know, I like the remake too, and I was going to ask. I know Kellen hasn't seen it. Melissa, have you seen you've seen the remake?
Mm-hmm.
I would have to assume. What did you think of the remake?
Okay, so when I first saw the remake, I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and maybe it was because I was such a fan of this one, and I think back then I used to be a lot more closed-minded about remakes. And since then I've come around a lot. Like I'm not, oh my God, this is gonna run my favorite movie because you're remaking it. And I'm totally off that bus now. I'm much more open-minded. I've been able to go back and revisit it kind of more of a standalone rather than a remake of one of my favorite movies. And plus Jensen Ackles. I mean, I actually live in his hometown, so that's fun. But yeah, so I actually really like it now. I don't watch it every year, like, you know, TJ was just saying, like, I don't watch it every year. I don't watch it as often for sure. I actually want to revisit it because we're talking about this one so much. But yeah, I've come around to it for sure. I haven't come around to Valentine yet. I will admit that movie has not grown on me. Maybe I need to revisit it too. I need to do like a Valentine's Day marathon or something. But I like it a lot more for sure.
Valentine's worth watching just for that one kill where
Hot tub?
No, I think it's the one where they fall like down 3 flights of stairs into a very interestingly placed garbage can.
Oh yeah. Valentine's okay. I think we gave it like a 2.5. It was our first Valentine's episode. It's fine. Like I own it, but I own everything. I own the Scream Factory, my Bloody Valentine Steelbook. So here's the thing with this, and where I can, first of all, I didn't like the remake either at first. I'm also not a big fan of 3D. It just seems unnecessary, and a lot of 3D movies just try too hard. That one didn't necessarily try too hard, but the first couple times, and like the whole motel scene and the trucker thing, like all that, I'm like, this is so unnecessary. I get it was like the times, like I get that, but that turned me off big time. But over the years, I've rewatched a few times, and it has grown on me. I'm fine with remakes too, but like you said, that's my thing, is I have to detach myself from the originals. Like even, and this is one of the most controversial things I've ever said. If you take the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street and the others didn't exist, would you hate that movie? I'm like, I don't think I would hate that movie. We hate it because Freddy's embedded inside of us. We know what he looks. Same thing with like how people think Jesus Christ looks like. There's one way Jesus Christ looks like. It's Keanu Reeves, right? Like, or Jared Leto. Everybody has this thing, and you're not going to deter them from that. And the same thing with Nightmare on Elm Street. Is it a good movie? No, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't look at it differently if a better product didn't already exist, right? But I'm fine with remakes. However, today I read that they're remaking The Faculty. Fuck off. Leave Faculty alone. Leave it alone.
Well, that CGI is a little sus for
It doesn't matter. It's
2025.
Josh Hartnett. It's perfect. Like, dude, just leave it alone.
Yes, that cast. Oh my God, they still have my heart.
We
I
all
love them.
collectively have a man crush on Josh Hartnett. Like when Trap came out, we just like jumped. Like, yeah, we're going to the theaters to see this. Like, he's fantastic. So this is another movie I think is embedded in us as horror fans. Like we call Kellen the noob. Like he's not quite as seasoned as us, so to speak. So that's part of the fun of this show is like we get to introduce some things that we like. So we have our bucket where we all put movies we want to watch together in. Like when I was putting mine in, I'm like, I want Kellen to watch this movie. I want Kellen to watch this movie. I could put 30 movies in here. So that's part of the fun too. But coming to it for the first time in 2025 is going to be completely different than us who've seen it multiple times because we know it, we love it. Is it a great film? Is it? I don't know. I don't think so. It's not a great film. There were some great parts for the time, especially like the best kill I think was Sylvia, which Helene Uddy, future guest. She was almost on tonight's show with us. Reached out to her. She said she was busy. She would answer questions for us. And I said, well, why don't you just come back later? She was also in that movie Pin. Has anybody else seen Pin about the dummy?
What year was
Sounds
that?
very familiar.
That's Homework. Pin. She's in that.
P-I-N or
P-I-N.
P-E-N? P-I-N. Okay.
So I was like, well, let's just get you on later in the year. We'll probably need a guest by that time anyway. So she'll come back later. But her kill was great. And the water, I think you said it was unnecessary to turn the water on, Kellen, right? Or is it just like a little too much?
No, I said that was the icing on the cake.
Oh, chef kiss.
That was super unnecessary.
Yeah,
Even
that
embarrassing if
sold
she
the whole
wasn't-
effect.
If
Yeah.
she
Like-
wasn't, do you remember back in the 90s that was a thing, like at late 80s, early 90s, like the shower, the bathtub things? You'd put like we had
Impaling
Flounder from Little
people's
Mermaid.
heads
No,
on
we had
showers was
Flounder
a
from
thing.
Little
in the
Mermaid,
80s?
and you'd put it over the
We all
over
did
the
it.
faucet in your shower, and it was like a character that was like vomiting water out into your bath.
Oh, I
for
remember
kids.
that. Yeah,
That's what they did with her.
I don't remember that, but I want one now. So, okay. So all the kills are great. And I don't know that I've ever seen the cut version. I can't recall ever seeing that.
The cut version has hardly any gore. It just suggests the gore.
Was that like a ratings thing?
Yeah, it was MPAA was really cracking down after Friday the 13th and everything. Even though they really cut up Friday the 13th, what they let out was still, had a lot of pushback from parent groups and different things. So everything after 1980, they were a lot more stringent on for a couple of years there.
Even in Canada, eh?
Yeah.
So a few other takeaways besides the Sylvia kill. I'm jealous of the friend group. That was a nice little friend group. Like I often romanticize, like, this is our friend group, right? We're on screens now. Like, it's just the way it is. Like, oh, we work, we live in our way, all these different things factor in. And these guys are probably at the same bar, same restaurant every night, probably 2 or 3 times a day, enjoying themselves, having a good time. I envy that friend group. Going back to Mel, you were talking about the small town lore. I'm from the 3rd smallest county in this state, in Tennessee. Kellen currently resides there. So I like the small town aspect as well. Also, I like small town lore, which is what this is.
Yeah.
There's this lore of Harry Warden. I like little movies like that too. I watched Lover's Lane today after I watched this again. And the first people that get killed, I think it's the first people, their names were Harriet and Ward. I'm like, okay, so we know where they got that from. Shitty movie, by the way.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it. I'm like, I'll watch it. I like trash movies too. So
I'm also from a small town of like 3,000 people named Walhalla.
Walhalla, South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Which part of
5
Texas are you in, Mel?
Well, I'm from a town called Joshua, of 5,000, and now I'm in Dallas. Though I moved up to the big
moved on
city.
up.
I moved up to the big city. Dallas
I
is
sure did.
huge.
I was
Yeah.
almost named Joshua, but my father taught my mom.
I was named Joshua. I just don't go by it.
Smart. But yeah, I like small town movies. Tom or TJ, I'm just like, that's Rufus Sewell, right? Like, it's got to be Rufus Sewell. The
looks
whole
a lot
time
like
I'm
him.
like, he looks just like Rufus Sewell. I guess Kellen didn't picked up on it before everybody else did, but I was like, the whole time you're thinking he's the killer. And like you, TJ, it's been a while since I've seen it, so I'm like, because I won't spoil the remake, but the killer is who we think it is in the remake.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they swap it.
Yeah, so
which I think adds to my confusion because I always know it's one of those guys, but then I always forget which one it is until it's closer to the reveal.
yeah, if he's paying attention, we spoiled that. But
ADD working in his favor.
Yeah, that's true. The whole time I'm like, oh, he's the killer, and then I forgot. Oh yeah, that's right, and then the whole part after, I wish they just kind of stopped with him like getting crushed. Like I enjoyed the cutting of the arm, the 127 days thing. Like I enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah.
But like him like scampering off while they were looking at him through the rocks.
Yeah, because if they made a sequel, he'd have to be the crazy one arm guy, and then everybody'd know who it is because it's the
that's
crazy
Lover's
guy
Lane.
with one arm.
Lover's Lane.
Plot twist.
That's Lover's Lane. Because the guy killer is the story of the hook on the car door.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. So that could.
You want to know my
a spiritual
favorite
sequel.
frame in this whole movie is? It's when they're telling the backstory of how Harry Warden goes crazy, and it just does a jump cut to just him, a close up of his face, just screaming into the camera with blood everywhere, and then just chowing down on an arm.
That was my
great.
second favorite scene. My favorite scene of the whole thing was when he killed Hollis, which is the mustache guy, and then they're over his body, and you can see down the mine, and here he comes. Like he's just walking straight out. I'm like, I absolutely love that scene. I can't really explain to you why, but I'm like, that's scary.
It's very chilling.
Yeah, I love that scene. Also, I was telling Kellen before we got on, like there was foreshadowing at are they at a restaurant when they're hanging out in the beginning, decorating?
I think that's some kind of restaurant.
So TJ like
there's a town that only has a laundromat and restaurants.
Was it not the whatever the hall was that they were going to be having Valentine
it.
dance?
Maybe that dance hall.
Dance hall. Yeah.
But when TJ comes in and he sees Sylvia, like I don't know if he's picking her up or she's standing on a ladder, but his hands are around her head, which is how she ends up getting killed. So there's foreshadowing there. So I want to watch it again to see if there's any more foreshadowing that maybe we just overlooked, because that was something I 100% overlooked.
I keep thinking you're talking about me and things that I've done that I don't remember.
We'll say Tom. You don't remember touching Sylvia's face?
I think I
the Valentine's dance. But overall, like I asked Kellen this question, I'm like, is it still considered a cult classic? Like, when does a cult classic stop becoming a cult classic? You know, like I said, it's got a comic book series, it's got a novelization, a board game, toys, figures, like all kinds of things. So is it still a cult classic, or does that cult status just keep going no matter how popular you get?
You know, I actually think it's still pretty niche. And the reason I say that is a lot of my friends here in Dallas are lovely ladies, and I have so much fun with them. But, when it comes to horror, it's very much like I want to go see a Scream movie. You know, it's more of like a scary movie night instead of like horror movies. And I think that that's a big difference, is kind of how you talk about the movies. And that's okay, either one. I don't gatekeep. I welcome all, and all three of you, even the newbie, but and I love this genre. But if I were to ask any of my girlfriends who do enjoy Scream and enjoy kind of the new, movies that come out, Companion, I saw Companion the other night with one of my friends. And if I were to say, hey, what do you think about My Bloody Valentine? They'd be like, I don't know that movie.
The band?
Like, yeah, exactly. And I think that it's still kind of niche, because even though we're seeing it more like out, you have to already know what it is to know what it is. You know what I mean? And I don't think a lot of people are just sitting down, maybe the remake, but I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are still seeing the original one.
Which is,
I think niche.
I think you labeled it as kind of like, that is the definition of a cult classic, is you have to already kind of be in the know and in the club and word of mouth, or just happen to catch it back in the day during those, formative times, I think is a big thing, because nostalgia is what keeps these cult films going.
Would y'all consider Rocky Horror Picture Show a cult classic?
Yeah, see, that one's just as popular, right? Like,
well, that one is incredibly popular now. I would still consider it a cult classic, because it was the cult classic status that made it popular.
Yeah, and it's still
the people that loved it and kept talking about it.
There's still a lot of people who've never seen it and don't care about it, but the people that love it, they love it.
And they're the ones that push it beyond that being a cult film. And that's the same with horror. A lot of horror gets pushed into the mainstream by the people who fervently love it, regardless of how well known it is. You know, the movies like this that aren't the Halloweens and the Texas Chainsaw Massacres and the Screams that everyone knows, the ones that just within the community people love, that make them popular enough to become more mainstream. So I would say it's still a cult classic. It's just
and also,
a popular cult classic.
It also
Yeah.
like it you know, the LGBTQ community, like it's huge there, as it should be, and that was just such a thing for the 70s when they came out with that, which is why I still think it's in that niche and that cult. I know people who absolutely hate it, but I also know who they voted for. You know what I'm saying? You know, like you can kind of figure it out who doesn't like a Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I thought you were talking about My Bloody Valentine. And
I
I'm
did
like,
too.
Really?
I was very confused. Like, is there a queer reading to this film that I'm missing or something?
In my head, I'm like, well, the two girls are like really good friends. But I was like trying to connect it in my head. And then I'm like, is this an anti-MAGA?
Right.
movie?
I was right there with
Okay,
you. I was
I'm
very
with you.
confused.
That's Kellen's fault.
I'm with you
but
now.
I apologize. Yeah, I know that Rocky
It
Horror.
all makes sense.
Yeah. See, all right, now we looped around. We get it. Okay, got it.
I think a lot too, like the difference is like a lot of people like elements of the Rocky Horror Picture Show because it's on Halloween lists, it's on every Spotify Halloween list and everything, but they've still never seen it. But they like probably the same thing with Nightmare Before Christmas. A lot of people probably have never really seen it, but my gosh, you know, Jack and Sally, you know.
Yeah.
Now, My Bloody Valentine, I don't know if people know Harry Ward.
I think that's the difference
Minor.
between like the A tier and the B tier horror films, and what kind of separates a mainstream hit from a cult classic.
Yeah, true. All right,
Maybe
so
in a few years.
Maybe.
Who knows?
So we'll go around and give our rankings, which is out of 5. But before, Companion, scale of 1 to 5, what did you give it?
Oh my gosh, like 4.5.
Okay.
Loved it.
I'm
Go see
banking
it.
on either that or The Monkey to be my favorite movie this year. I thought I was getting free passes to The Monkey last night. TJ sent me a link for a screening that I had to jump through 30 hoops for, and then it wasn't for the Stephen King movie. I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I didn't see it. So, but it was Life of Chuck. But it was like 30 minutes away. It didn't start till 7:15. I had been at work since 6 a.m. So I ended up not going. But if it was The Monkey, I would have been there, like hands down, because I'm super excited for that. I saw a thing they released today where they were submitting it to television stations, and they were just getting turned down left and right, like the trailer. So what? And I posted that meme today where it's the Undertaker in front of AJ Styles, and it's like neon, and then A24 Blumhouse.
That's
like
great.
Neon is knocking it out of the park.
They are. And they're doing something really cool with this one because, you know, they're sending out these press emails of saying, like what you were just talking about, like all of these like censored forms that they're getting back from the MPAA or MPA, whatever it is now, where they're highlighting everything that they're saying, like we cannot air this because of this gore, because of this head ripping off, you know. So they're doing like some really fun marketing, but man, Neon is
who's ever in charge of their
coming up.
promotion department, bravo, because Longlegs was the same way. Like the promotion for Longlegs was incredible. So someone knows what the hell they're doing over there, and we appreciate it.
I listened to yesterday like a 1 hour Joe Dante and a friend of his do a podcast called The Movies That Made Us, is actually the screenwriter of Eastern Promises. Was it Eastern Promises? No, A History of Violence. I think that's what it was. And
I assume that was the same person.
you would think they're very similar films in vibe, but they had like an hour and a half interview with the screenwriter of Companion that really made me want to watch that film because
good.
Neon's the one that's getting us finally a chance to see the new Toxic Avenger, right?
I think
no,
it's
that
streaming somewhere, right?
that is oh my gosh, Cineverse is going to cover
Yeah,
that.
Cineverse, that's right. It's the same one that did Terror.
Cineverse, which means that'll probably be on Screenbox, probably.
Screenbox. So it'll come to theaters first, I think, and then it's going to come to Screenbox.
The reason that it hadn't got I did read that they in the contract it had to have a theatrical release before streaming, and they couldn't find a distributor, and then Cineverse stepped in and was like, "Yeah, we don't care."
I honestly cannot believe that was so hard to get a distributor.
Well, because it's unrated, and so Cineverse is really the one who did the big unrated, theatrical release with Terrifier, and now they've proven that they can bring money in. So now the studios are like, cool, let's.
I would say
companies are like,
everything
let's
that's
do it.
happened. I would say everything that's happened with the build up to it is going to make it even more money, because casual people that probably would have been on the fence about seeing it will probably just go see it to figure out exactly why it was so hard to get released.
Yeah, I want Uncle Lloyd to be a millionaire. That's all I want.
He needs to retire. Well, he doesn't need to retire, but he needs to be able to have the money to retire if he so chooses.
Right. All right, so we'll go around, give our rankings, and we'll close up shop. I had a 4 written down, and I'm like, I'm not going to give this a 4. And I'm like, maybe I'll do a 3. I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to give it a 3.5, but that's fueled by pure nostalgia and just the fact that this film is so critical in horror history for me. So I gave it a 3.5. Kellen?
Yeah, Melissa brought up something that kind of like bounced around in my head a minute, and you touched on it before, but the whole not having seen it until now. Like, there's been so much better quality, and I don't mean just quality as in storytelling and writing and acting and everything, but just visually. And this movie is hard to watch it sometimes just because it's in a coal mine. It's so dark. It's hard to see the things that are actually happening, and that kind of takes you out of it too. It's the same thing as not being able to hear the dialogue. Like we had movies where it's real loud during some scenes, and then they talk, and it's like hey guys, do you know what happened to the girl that we found her? And then there's a car chase, and it's super loud. So that's kind of what this movie suffers from. So maybe I'm a little jaded not seeing some of these classic movies until now, and like you said, I don't have the nostalgia for them. I don't have the love for them because they were constantly on rotation growing up. I don't remember ever seeing this on Channel 30 when I did watch my B horror movies. So it's hard for me to give it a better rating than what I'm going to give it. But I do think it has its place in horror. I do think the killer should be more iconic than he is, because it is a great look. It's 1,000 times better than A History of Violence. I don't know. I still think that was such a swing and a miss. Not A History of Violence.
No, In a Violent Nature.
In a Violent Nature. Sorry, not.
I'm like, what's wrong with Viggo's face?
Yeah, not Viggo Mortensen. Jason Voorhees or whatever.
Johnny, future guest. He's going to come on the show before Full Moon Horror and Tattoo Festival. So you better clean that shit up.
I'm gonna ask him about that mask. I'm gonna ask him real hard. I'm like, "What's up with the mask, bro? What's up with
Minion
the
mask. The Minion mask.
Did you pick that so that you could walk across the bottom of the lake when you did that kill? Is that why you had it as a scuba diving mask? Anyway, I give it a 2. It's not terrible. It's watchable. Like I said, it just bored me.
Well, the dated part I completely get that. I don't have that with movies for some reason, but TV shows I do. So, like, what's one of the greatest shows of all time? The Wire. I'd never seen The Wire. I was in New Orleans a couple years ago. I guess, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and the African American main guy, I can't think of his name. He was there, like right in front of me, and I'm like, oh, and somebody's like, that's the guy from The Wire. I'm like,
the guy played the president in 24.
No, not him.
Not that guy.
No, this guy's chunky.
Oh.
We'll Google it off air. But he was there and I didn't know him. And I'm like, that's the show. I've always heard from everyone, like, you got to watch The Wire. You got to watch The Wire. And I love The Wire. But watching it where they're having to go to a payphone, we tapped this payphone because that's all that was really out there. Like, that stuff is hard for me to watch when things are dated like that. Even going back to the X-Files, sometimes in the earlier seasons, it's a little hard. But
when they whip out their flip phone.
Right. So I totally get that aspect of it. All right, Mel.
Okay, so my score for a movie like this, how I'm going to score this is obviously it is going to be higher than what we've already heard. But the reasons is that, they kept it very authentic. They actually went into a freaking coal mine and recorded this, and it was hell. It was like the worst production. Everybody had trauma from it. Like, it was just awful. So I have to give them props for that. And then also, this is one I did an article a few years back just because it's just fun for me to think about, of 80s movies that never had a sequel. And we mentioned it that there has been sequel, talks over the years, but nothing has ever come of it. Maybe this will get a legacy sequel at some point. But I actually think it's amazing that in 2025, we're talking about this cheap slasher that was filmed in a coal mine that never even had a sequel. This is the entire franchise, for the original. Like, this is it. And it's still got a reboot, and it's still got a comic, and it's still got action figures and things like that. So I give it props for that. And then also, holiday horror, always a plus for me. And of course the movie itself, I really enjoy it. So I'm giving it a 4. And because I get a lot of entertainment out of it. When I look back at these old movies, that's kind of how I have to also judge it. Like Jaws 3D is like a 5 out of 5. But yeah, that's how I look at it, is like I have to judge it on how much entertainment I get out of it, and I get quite a bit. So
Yeah, that's fair. Teach.
I think that's some good points that Mel makes, because I'm like you, Jay. I'm kind of caught between a 4 and a 3.5. But the very fact that the iconography of this killer and the idea of this movie, maybe even more than the movie, just the title and the concept of it, has survived longer than most of us have been alive and is still moving forward, despite the fact that there's no traction towards making a sequel or even rebooting the remake or making a sequel to the remake that's now almost 20 years old. So also the fact that I do come back to it every year, and it has become like my definitive Valentine's Day horror film that I watch. I don't come back to 3.5-star movies every year, right? I come back to 4-star movies. So I think that's what it's got to be.
That was a little pretentious towards the end. But that rounds us up at a 4 for my Bloody Valentine 1981. 4. Go watch it. It's fun. Watch the remake. Kellen, that's next. You watch the remake. I bet you're gonna hate it. I'm putting money on it right now.
I bet he hates the remake worse than the OG.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think so.
I can't wait to find out.
Like Abigail Skinamarink type.
Probably.
That's strong.
I may be
words.
wrong. I've been wrong before.
because-
Clearly, like the Abigail fiasco.
Because
But
my
anyways,
disdain for Abigail is well documented on this podcast.
I still will never understand that.
and yet
I
we
think
keep
you're
them
the
around.
only person I've ever heard say that too.
And
See,
the
now you got
shock-
something no one else. We have something no one else has, right?
I still see the shock on TJ's face when I closed my eyes when I said that I hated it, because like his whole demeanor was like,
Oh yeah, and
I
that's-
thought for sure you love it.
yeah. Like I mean, I don't know if you listen to that episode or remember, but like I got an advanced screening of it. I saw it and I texted everybody, you guys got to go see this. I'm like, y'all are going to love it. I'm like, especially my best freaking friend. Like, he's going to love this movie because our personalities are so similar. He gave it a 0. He eventually gave it a 1 after we watched Mickey's Mousetrap, because we would have kicked him off the show if he had given it more than Mickey's freaking Mousetrap. So, but that's, hey, you never know. He mixes it up. He keeps us on our toes. So
If you were all the same, it would be boring.
yeah,
so.
it would suck if we all had the same opinions. Like, which one we just do milk and cereal, and I think we both shocked TJ on that one. Like,
I liked it. I don't know.
I had the same view that
movie you
Kellen had
guys watched.
today. Was like, it was nothing. It's nothing to me. Like, I don't care. Like, I watched it. Okay, cool. I'm moving on in my life. My meme I made with Always Sunny, the fight milk and cereal, is better than that entire film, in my opinion. So.
I will say they have a couple of other short horror films that I want to check out because they look more like movies and not found footage. But I don't know that that one may have been the worst one to start off, because now I've kind of lost some steam on wanting to care about anything else they've done.
Right. Well, it's just like we talked about, and we'll wrap this up. I'm sorry, but like Deadstream. I made you watch Deadstream. How good was Deadstream?
I love
Like
that.
things like that can be done well. But anyways, all right. That's it for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok. Join our group on Facebook. And I have an Amazon Music playlist. I listened to it on my way home today. It is fantastic. It's features music from scores of movies we've spoken about, music from guests, music from the guests' movies that they've been in. I can't get the Ravenous soundtrack's not on Amazon Music, which is just driving me fucking nuts, because I want the whole album on there and it's not on there. So, but go check that out. Come back next week. Supposedly it'll be director Ryan Kruger. He did Fried Berry and the Street Trash remake. We were supposed to talk to him already, but he postponed. So hopefully next week when you come back, that's who we'll be chatting with in South Africa.
Navigating an 8-hour time difference is difficult for scheduling 4 people
Yes.
to.
I think it's
Make
funny.
that
I
work.
think we're on this same list here because I just did my interview with Ryan.
My list is just me randomly going in people's DMs. So
There's
No,
that.
I love it.
Don't let him lie. He's come to me at least 5 times and be like, Melissa did it. We got to do it.
I mean, technically, we
I'm
could
honored.
probably do a lot more of the newer things, and because we're on like all the PR lists, and we could do anything Screenbox or Shutter. We just are lazy.
Yeah, it's hard for all of us to really see a newer movie at the same time. Like TJ
Yeah.
and I've seen Wolfman, but Kellen hasn't, so we're not going to do a Wolfman
Yeah.
episode till later. Like there were a few that we got lucky on, like Nosferatu. We all saw in theaters because we wanted to see the Nosferatu dong that everybody was talking about. That if our meme post is, I think it's like 91,000 now. Like it's
higher than that now.
it's
So-
nuts. All right, Melissa, thank you again for joining
It
us.
is nuts.
Come back
you.
anytime you want. Take another second, tell everybody where they can find you and
Sure.
everything.
So the publication is horrorgeeklife.com, and I'm Texan, so yes, I say it that way, but it's not horror, it is horror. horrorgeeklife.com. I'm at Horror Geek Mel on Instagram and Blue Sky and Threads, but mainly Instagram. That's my main active platform, and we're also at Horror Geek Life.
Nice. I think they got onto me our first couple episodes because it sounded like I was Danny DeVito and Always Sunny. And I was like, welcome back to the Horrors Sanctum podcast.
I get called out a lot for that. And I'm like, I'm Texan. Like, I try to hide that Texan a little bit, but I'm like, I just cannot say those R's. So
we get it. We're all
Let that
Tennessee, South
Texan
Carolina.
I did look
flag
up-
fly.
I did look up when you said a holiday horror, and I thought, hey, I'm a holiday horror. I love the holidays.
Speaking
we
of
need
holiday
those
horror,
shirts now.
that message that you got, TJ, from some guy wants us to review his short a movie called Bishop's Day. So apparently that's a new. I think it's, I don't know what
I guess
Bishop's Day is.
They end with polishing the bishop, I believe.
Nice. I told him I would do it myself on my personal page. We wouldn't do an episode on it.
You
but
would polish the bishop on your personal page?
if the money's there. All right.
Amen.
Signing off. I'm Jay with Kellen, Melissa, and TJ. And until next time.
Keep it spooky, kids.